On my very first day walking into that office, I never expected I'd become a public joke. They looked me up and down, my plain shoes, my small-town accent, and smirked like I had wandered into a world where I didn't belong. My name is Emily Parker, 25 years old, raised in a small town, carrying inside me the hunger to prove my worth. Standing in my way was Travis Cole, my direct manager, a smooth talker in front of the higher-ups, but cruel and ruthless to those beneath him. The place I worked was nothing like the dream jobs you read about, but a cold office where the glossy surface hid clicks, schemes, and knives waiting to be driven into your back. And here, one misstep was enough to ruin my entire career. In an environment where reputation meant everything, I knew I only needed one chance to show my ability. But instead of recognition, I was handed menial tasks, laughed at in front of the crowd, and worst of all, my ideas were stolen by Travis himself. I chose to stay silent then, but inside I swore I would make them pay. This wasn't just another story about injustice in the workplace. It was one of those revenge stories where anyone who's ever been underestimated can see themselves in my shoes. And you know what? That was only the beginning. This was only the beginning. I was born in a small town where cornfields stretched endlessly toward the horizon. My childhood was tied to the smell of damp earth after rain, the sound of wind whistling through a wooden roof, and those early mornings helping my mother prepare breakfast before driving myself to school. That simple, sometimes harsh life shaped me into someone persistent, someone who never gave up. But it also left me with habits and a voice that set me apart from people in the city. I was never afraid of hard work or challenges, but I always carried one fear: being looked down on before I ever had the chance to prove my true worth. Since I was a kid, I had the habit of keeping a journal. On the old wooden desk in my room, there was always a green notebook, filled with slanted handwriting, retelling the day's events. I wrote down my joys, my sadness, even the smallest little details. As I grew older, I added another habit. Whenever I had an idea, I would immediately email it to myself. I saw it as a way to leave a digital trail so that at any moment, I'd have proof the idea was mine. I never realized this odd little routine would one day become my shield. When I decided to apply for a new job, I chose not to reveal who my father really was. He was the head of the corporation, but he had taught me that real value comes only from personal effort. I wanted to walk on my own 2 feet. The company I joined had an unshakable principle. Every draft, idea, and document had to be logged by email, version history, or audit trail. This system wasn't just to protect intellectual property, it was also the foundation for discipline whenever disputes arose. I studied the employee handbook carefully, memorized the rule, and quietly promised myself one day it would help me prove the truth. On my very first day in the office, I was overwhelmed by the harsh white lights, the constant hammering of keyboards, and the twin monitors glowing with streams of data. My coworkers wore sharp suits, chatting about weekend parties at upscale bars or luxury beach vacations. I quietly opened my desk drawer, placed the lunchbox my mother had packed inside, and pulled out a small photo of my family to keep there. "You brought your lunch?" A young coworker named Liam looked at me with a smirk. "Yeah, I'm used to it. It's cheaper and more comfortable," I answered, forcing my voice to stay even. "People here don't do that. But suit yourself." He walked away, leaving a thin laugh behind. In the first meeting, I met Travis Cole, my direct manager. His words rolled off smoothly, his eyes sharp, his smile too confident, almost arrogant. Within just minutes of watching him, I could already see the disdain beneath his polished exterior. After the meeting ended, I overheard him leaning toward someone else, his voice loud enough for me to catch. "Look at how she dresses, must be from some little town far away. I give her a month, tops." I swallowed the lump in my throat and told myself, as long as I work hard, they'll respect me. So I kept pushing, never complaining, but the whispers grew louder, the stares more piercing. I was assigned only menial work, never trusted with anything important. In the break room, when I opened my lunchbox, I heard the giggles behind me. That night, I sat before the green notebook and wrote, "Day 10, they still look down on me, but I won't give up. One day, the truth will be revealed." I looked up at the wall clock in my tiny apartment, the second hand ticking softly. Yet inside me, a strange unease began to rise. I didn't know why, but I felt something was about to change everything. And the very next morning, the first major project was announced. That day, as I walked into the conference room, I could feel the tension in the air. Management was announcing a new project, a major marketing campaign for an important client that everyone wanted to be part of. I sat quietly at the end of the table, listening intently, my heart pounding with both nerves and excitement. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. When the team lead asked if anyone had ideas, I took a deep breath and raised my hand. My voice shook slightly but remained clear. I think we could build a campaign around emotional connection. Instead of just promoting the product, let's create a story from everyday moments. It won't just be relatable, it will touch the client's heart. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then I heard a quiet laugh from the corner. Someone whispered, "Sounds like something from a small-town fair." A few heads nodded, but most of the glances I caught were mocking rather than intrigued. I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay calm. Travis Cole, my manager, just smirked. Thanks, Emily. Interesting idea." He quickly moved on, acting like my proposal wasn't worth exploring. I went back to my seat, torn between disappointment and anger. Still, I believed at least a few people might remember my idea. What I didn't know was that Travis had other plans. A few days later, during a big client presentation, I sat in the back, laptop open to take notes. On the screen, Travis began presenting his campaign. My stomach dropped as I realized the words, the examples, even the structure were identical to what I had suggested. He'd only tweaked a few minor details, but the core was entirely mine. The clients listened intently, nodding, visibly impressed. When Travis finished, the room erupted in applause. One client smiled. "We love this emotionally driven approach. It's truly unique." Management looked at Travis with admiration. And me? I sat there with freezing hands, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Each compliment felt like a knife twisting deeper in my chest. I wanted to stand up, to shout that it was my idea. But I had no proof right then. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. In my head, I kept hearing Travis's mocking laugh from before. I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood, forcing myself to stay silent. That night, I dug through my personal inbox. I remembered clearly that right after the meeting, I had emailed the idea to myself as a record. And just as I suspected, the email was still there. I opened it and saw the timestamp. Evidence. Email. 9:47 a.m. Emotional connection campaign. Original idea. Building a story from everyday moments. I clenched my fist, exhaling shakily. This was the proof I needed. The pain of having my idea stolen burned inside me, but there was also relief in knowing I wasn't defenseless. I understood now that I could never let this go. The next day at the office, everyone's eyes lit up with admiration when they looked at Travis. He strutted past me, paused, leaned down close to my ear, and whispered just loud enough, "Sometimes you've got to step aside for people with real talent. You should get used to that." I swallowed my rage, meeting his eyes with a cold stare. Inside I made a vow. You will pay. One day, I'll make you face the truth. I knew the battle had just begun, and in this ruthless environment, if I wasn't careful, I could lose everything. That night, I closed my green notebook and wrote one last line. Today I was betrayed, but worse is waiting ahead. But worse was coming. I thought that after the shock of having my idea stolen, nothing could possibly get worse. But then a string of humiliations kept coming, as if the entire office had quietly agreed to push me down to the bottom. Each workday was no longer a chance to prove myself, but a silent battle, just to keep from breaking. The first incident happened on a Monday morning. Travis strolled into the room, holding his expensive coffee, his voice loud and clear. "Emily, we have a tradition here. New employees buy coffee for the whole team, to show team spirit. Go on, everyone's waiting." I froze, confused. Why me? Why had I never heard of this tradition? I glanced around, hoping someone might speak up, but everyone just smirked or looked away. Forcing a weak smile, I grabbed my wallet and walked out. As the door shut behind me, I heard muffled snickering. I returned with a bag full of coffees, that cost nearly a day's meals for me, and quietly placed each cup on the table. Travis raised an eyebrow. "Good, you're learning to adapt." My chest tightened like stone, my hands trembling with anger. The small outcome was clear. I had lost more self-respect, and in the eyes of my colleagues, I was now a servant. The second incident came the following week. Travis called me into his office, slamming a thick folder onto the desk. Prepare slides for the executive meeting. Write the weekly report. Schedule every detail of next week's meetings. Consider this your chance to sharpen your skills. My pulse quickened. These were clearly his tasks, not mine. I cautiously protested. But Travis, I think. He cut me off sharply. If you want to last here, do it, or don't. It's your choice. I left in silence. Folder clutched in my arms. That night, the office was dark except for my lamp, the sound of my typing the only noise. When the clock neared midnight, my eyes stung as I finally finished. I saved everything carefully, the original file still under my name. Evidence, log file 11:58 p.m., report final draft by Emily.docs created and saved. The next morning, Travis stood before the executives, presenting my slides with complete confidence. He spoke as if every word had been his own, and when the praise came, he smiled proudly. I sat at the far end, biting my lip until I tasted blood. The outcome was painful. He was praised, and I remained invisible, a shadow. The third incident cut the deepest. At a company party, as glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, Travis suddenly stood up and mocked my small-town accent. "Hi, I'm Emily. I love eating lunchboxes and writing in my diary every night." The room erupted in laughter. A few clapped along, others mimicked my voice, dragging out words like it was a comedy act. My face burned, my hands shook. I wanted to run, but my legs were glued to the floor. My vision blurred, my ears filled with the roar of laughter. When I returned to my seat, I overheard someone whisper, "She won't last the month." I clenched my teeth, swallowing back tears. The outcome this time was devastating. I was no longer just ignored. I was the office clown, a complete outsider in my own workplace. In the days that followed, it only grew worse. I was forced into unpaid overtime, fixing documents while Travis left early for bars. I saved several small projects from failure, but each time, Travis claimed the credit. Once, when a client complained about an error in a contract, Travis immediately blamed me. HR summoned me for a warning. The looks from my colleagues turned colder, sharper, tinged with contempt. I felt trapped in an invisible cage, no way out. At night, I opened my green notebook and wrote, "I am slowly losing everything. They see me as a joke, a nameless worker, but I will not collapse. I must wait for my chance." I stared out my apartment window, the city lights flickering against the night. Inside, a strange feeling stirred. I knew Travis wouldn't stop. His ambition would push him further, riskier, and when he reached too far, that would be my moment to strike back. Travis was preparing to overreach. I once thought the humiliation at the company party was the worst Travis could ever do to me. But I was wrong. That was only the opening act of something far more calculated, sophisticated, and cold. I began to realize that what was happening to me wasn't a series of coincidences. It was a deliberate plan. After the first wave of incidents, I noticed younger coworkers, the ones who had at least been politely distant before, now avoided me completely. Liam, the guy who once smiled when he saw me eating from my lunchbox, now turned his back whenever I walked in. I caught glimpses of complicit looks, subtle nods whenever Travis passed by. It was clear he was orchestrating an entire network inside our department. This wasn't just one man's disdain, it was a machine Travis had built to isolate me, to crush me step by step. I overheard whispers in the women's restroom. One colleague muttered, "Travis said it's better not to get close to Emily. She won't last anyway. Being around her just brings trouble." When I stepped out, they froze, fumbled with silence, then hurried off. My heart clenched as though it had been crushed. I was officially an outcast. Things worsened when the biggest project of the quarter was announced. $1 million contract, every team wanted to shine. Travis was put in charge of our group, and of course, he pushed me out of the important meetings. "Emily, this time you'll just handle logistics. No need to join brainstorming. You're not experienced enough yet." I sat at my desk, staring through the glass wall at them, debating energetically, my heart tearing apart. That night, I worked on my own. I read dozens of reports, studied market trends, scribbled pages of notes. I believed that if I ever got the chance, I could present a unique direction. As always, I opened my email and sent a draft of my idea to myself. Evidence. Email. 01:23 a.m. Human-centered campaign proposal. additional data on consumer behavior. I saved it, certain it would be needed one day. But when presentation day arrived, I was relegated to the back, pouring water and arranging papers. Travis walked up front, his slide deck gleaming. My stomach flipped when I realized his entire presentation was my midnight draft. He had polished the slides, added flashy charts, but the heart of it was mine. I glanced at Jenna, the only colleague who still treated me with kindness. Her face was full of pity. She whispered, "He got into your file." My chest went cold. So Travis wasn't just stealing ideas from meetings, he had an inside man feeding him my personal work. The clients were impressed, management nodded approvingly, praise flowed freely. I sat trembling, feeling as if my soul had been stripped away. I wanted to stand up, to reveal the truth, but no one except Jenna would believe me. If I spoke, I'd be dismissed as jealous, unprofessional. I swallowed my tears, forcing my face into a mask of calm. After the meeting, Travis strolled to my desk, laid a hand on my shoulder, and whispered with mock sympathy. "See, not everyone's cut out for this environment. But don't feel bad, you've contributed in your own way." I shoved his hand off, staring into his eyes, the shame in my throat nearly choking me. The next day, HR summoned me over a technical error in a report, an error I hadn't made. Travis had skillfully shifted all blame onto me, even though he had been the final approver. HR warned, "One more mistake and we'll have to reconsider your position here." I nodded silently, though inside, I felt like I had just dropped another level deeper into a pit. In the following days, Travis tightened his grip on his power network. He manipulated the younger staff with promises and after-hours drinking sessions. Those who aligned with him were protected, those who sided with me were frozen out. I became utterly isolated. Walking through the hallway, I heard snickers behind me, but when I turned, everyone bent over their desks, pretending to work. I started to believe I had lost. There was no way left to be recognized fairly. At night, I opened my green notebook and wrote with trembling hands, "I've done everything, but no one believes me. I have proof, but no one wants to see it. Maybe I should give up." But just when I felt on the verge of collapse, a thought struck me. I remembered the company's unshakable principle. Every document, every idea left a digital footprint, emails, version logs, audit trails. If I could be patient, if I could prepare enough, I could turn this around. That night, I stared at my screen, at the time-stamped email I had sent myself. I whispered, "This will be the key. This will be the path to strike back." My heart pounded, filled with both fear and determination. I had hit rock bottom, but from that depth I began to think about revenge. And I knew there was only one way, through the company's own rule of transparency, the one thing Travis couldn't erase. I had started to think about revenge through the very laws of accountability, and a silent war was waiting just ahead. I had reached the very bottom of despair. But in that moment I realized that if I just sat quietly and endured, I would forever remain the weak one in their eyes. I needed a plan, a path to turn the truth into my weapon and use the company's own rules as my shield. 4 letters echoed in my mind. Cage, collect, align, gamble, edge. It wasn't just a framework I invented for myself. It was the rhythm that would carry me out of this corporate hell. Collect, evidence. I began with the most obvious, proof. I no longer wrote in my journal just to vent my anger. I turned it into a meticulous record. Every time Travis made me do his work, I saved the original files under my own account and sent another copy to myself email. When he forced me into unpaid overtime, I noted my in and out times using office camera snapshots, saved in a private folder. One time, I discovered by chance that a document's author tag had been deleted. I went to Paul, the quiet IT guy no one ever paid much attention to. I asked him to restore the original. He put on his headphones, typed a few quick lines, then smiled. "Here, the log file's still there." He sent me the copy, time-stamped and intact. I knew I had just loaded another bullet into my arsenal. Align, allies. I knew I couldn't fight alone against the network Travis had built. I needed support. Jenna was the first person I thought of. One afternoon, I invited her to a cafe near the office. Lowering my voice, I said, "You've seen how Travis treats me. I can't let him keep getting away with this, but I need someone to believe me." Jenna looked at me for a long moment, then placed her hand on mine. "Emily, I know you're not lying. If you want to bring this into the light, I'll stand with you." My eyes burned. Since starting at the company, it was the first time I felt I wasn't completely alone. Paul, the silent ally, agreed to help within his limits. He told me, "I don't like drama, but I hate seeing the strong bully the weak. I'll give you the logs when you need them, but you must be careful. Travis has friends up high. One mistake could cost you everything." I nodded, knowing I was stepping into a gamble where one wrong move would ruin me. Gamble. The bet. I knew I couldn't just hoard evidence and wait for justice to magically appear. I had to pick a moment to reveal the truth, a stage where Travis couldn't deny it. And nothing was better than the upcoming strategic meeting with a major client, where executives and HR would all be present. I prepared for that day as if preparing for a trial. Each night, I refined my own slides, added stronger data, cross-checked the numbers. I practiced my words, rehearsed in front of a mirror, recorded my voice to adjust my tone. I pictured the client's eyes, the whispers of coworkers, and Travis's stunned face when I finally struck back. Edge. The advantage. I understood Travis's strength wasn't just his slick tongue, it was his ability to manipulate the crowd. So I needed an advantage he couldn't touch, the company's rules. Audit trails, emails, version logs, dry technical things, but they would be the fortress around me. I kept my trump card hidden, not telling anyone but Paul. It was a chain of irrefutable data, enough to tear down every excuse Travis could conjure. But I wouldn't play it too soon. I needed him to step deeper into the trap, so that when I unleashed it, the entire structure would collapse on him. During the planning, I was painfully aware of the risks. If I failed when I stood up, I would be branded as insubordinate, a bitter employee. Travis's ties to upper management meant he could spin the story, paint me as dishonest. Worse, if my evidence wasn't airtight, I could be fired immediately. Many nights, I lay awake, haunted by the consequences. But the more I thought, the more I realized, doing nothing was the real failure. One evening, Jenna and I sat together in my small apartment. She looked me in the eye, voice steady. "Emily, you might lose. But if you don't stand up, Travis will keep trampling you forever. Sometimes, the riskiest bet is the only path forward." I nodded, gripping her hand. For the first time, I saw a spark of determination in my reflection I had never noticed before. The plan was set, each step clear. I had to collect to arm myself, align with allies, gamble with a decisive move, and edge the battle by leaning on the rules. I felt as though everything was finally in my hands. But then, something unexpected struck. On a Thursday morning, I received an email from IT, but not from Paul. The message was short. "Check your account. Signs of unauthorized access to your personal email." My chest sank, sweat prickling down my back. I rushed to Paul. He looked at me, worry etched across his face. "Emily, someone tried to wipe the logs from the system. I'm not sure I can preserve everything." I stood frozen. All the collect I had built, weeks of careful work, could vanish in an instant. My revenge plan, once so solid, was suddenly under threat from an unexpected attack. Someone had already touched the very evidence I was counting on, and I understood then that this battle was going to be far more brutal than I had imagined. I had prepared for that day, as if I were preparing for a trial. Every piece of evidence, every log file, every archived email, I had layered them carefully, stored them like weapons waiting to be used. I knew if I failed, I would lose everything. But if I succeeded, it would be the moment that changed it all. And then the day finally came. Step 1. Collect and fortify the evidence. I spent the entire last week reviewing all my data. My journals were photographed and scanned. The emails I had sent to myself were flagged and placed in a folder I titled Final Proof. I created extra copies on an external drive and handed it to Jenna for safekeeping. Paul, my quiet IT ally, restored another critical log that proved my name had been erased from the report. Evidence, log file, 10:43 p.m., user Travis Cole, removed author tag from report final draft by Emily.dux. When I saw that line, it was like a drum pounding in my chest. This was the kind of truth no one could deny. Step 2. Align with allies. I met Jenna at a quiet cafe. She held my hand and said, "Are you ready? When it happens, you'll have to stay calm." I nodded, forcing a smile even though storms raged inside me. With Paul, we agreed that if things spiraled out of control, he would send the log file directly to HR. I knew I needed them, 2 pillars holding up my fragile ship in the storm. Step 3. Choose the moment to gamble. I requested speaking time during the strategic meeting. At first, Travis dismissed me outright. Just sit in the back, don't interrupt. This is big league work. But quietly, I had already sent my proposal to the executive calendar. They granted me a few minutes to present a fresh perspective. I couldn't help but smile when I imagined Travis's face once he realized I would be speaking in front of everyone. Step 4. Flip the stage. The meeting day arrived. The conference room was gleaming, clients seated across from us, executives and HR in attendance. Travis began with a dazzling slide deck, his voice smooth and confident. I sat at the far end of the table, clutching my green notebook, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Near the end of his presentation, the clients shifted in their seats. We need something fresher. This approach feels similar to what we've seen before. Travis faltered for a second, then tried to wrap up with empty promises. That was my cue. I rose to my feet. If I may, I'd like to offer a different direction. All eyes turned to me. Travis narrowed his gaze, but I walked forward anyway. Opening my slides, I shared a story rooted in the small-town life I had come from. I spoke of how ordinary moments create powerful emotional connections, reinforced by the consumer data I had researched. My voice trembled at first, but soon it steadied, grew stronger. When I finished, silence hung heavy for a few seconds. Then the clients broke into applause. This is the vision we've been looking for. Executives exchanged astonished glances. Travis's face drained of color. Step 5. Expose the truth. I returned to my seat, but Travis shot up, his voice sharp. That idea was part of my proposal. I guided Emily. She only followed my lead. The room buzzed with whispers. I inhaled deeply, then switched the screen to the log file. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a system record. It shows exactly who erased my name from the report. And here's the email I sent to myself. Timestamp before Travis ever submitted his proposal. Gasps filled the room. Executives leaned toward one another. HR scribbled furiously. Travis stammered, sweat beading across his forehead. I thought I had won. But then, the unexpected happened. HR opened their laptop to verify, but the log file on the main server was gone. Someone had erased the entire chain. Travis pounced. She fabricated this evidence. She colluded with IT to take me down. The room erupted with murmurs. My chest sank. Everything I had worked for threatened to collapse before my eyes. I glanced at Paul. His face was pale, but then he gave me a subtle nod. I remembered our backup plan and realized he had prepared for this exact moment. Straightening my posture, I said firmly, I anticipated this might happen. That's why I stored a copy on an external drive and sent another directly to HR's secure inbox. Jenna rose beside me, placing a USB on the table. This copy has been with me all along, untouched. The clients widened their eyes. HR plugged in the drive and the data appeared, complete with untouched timestamps. Travis's face twisted, the smug grin finally gone. The room fell into a suffocating silence until HR nodded. The evidence is valid. I exhaled slowly. I had improvised my way out of disaster. The plan that nearly fell apart was saved by careful preparation and loyal allies. I turned to Travis. He was trembling now, eyes darting desperately for an escape. But I knew the battle wasn't over. One last move remained, the trump card no one yet knew I had. In my heart, I whispered, one last move. The conference room froze in silence. I stood there, my breath heavy but my eyes unwavering. In front of me were the executives, HR, the clients, and every colleague. This was the final stage, the moment when the truth would be laid bare. Travis forced a crooked smile, his voice unsteady. She's making this up. It's nothing but jealousy. I was the one guiding her. Emily only handled minor tasks. I stared straight at him, my voice steady and firm. You want proof? I'll give you proof. I switched on the screen and pulled up the first email I had sent myself. Evidence Master. Email 40 a.m. Emotional Connection Campaign. Original idea, building a story from everyday moments. The room filled with murmurs. That was the very idea Travis had stolen in the first meeting. Next, I displayed the log file Paul had restored. Log file 11 p.m. Report final draft by Emily.Dux, created and saved. It was undeniable that I was the creator of the report Travis had claimed as his own. HR nodded, taking detailed notes. I didn't stop there. Another file appeared on the screen. Evidence Master. Log file 10:43 p.m. User Travis Cole. Removed author tag from report final draft by Emily.Docx. The words on the screen sliced through the air like a sharp blade, cutting down every excuse. The entire room gasped in shock. Travis's face drained of color, sweat trickling down his temple. No, that's not right. It must be a system error. I locked eyes with him, my tone icy. If it was a system error, why did you try to erase the entire log chain from the server? Luckily, I sent a copy to HR beforehand. Jenna stepped forward and placed a USB on the table. HR plugged it in, and the full chain of data appeared, complete with timestamps that could not be denied. Then I pulled out my final card, the secret I had never revealed. Evidence Master. Secret Ace. Email Auto Archive. 2 a.m. Human-centered campaign proposal. Additional data, auto-forwarded to HR secure inbox. It was a secure copy I had sent earlier, untouchable and impossible to delete. As the text glowed on the screen, I heard the executives draw sharp breaths, while the clients looked at me with newfound respect. I stepped forward, my voice echoing, "This is the truth. My ideas were stolen. I was humiliated, isolated, forced into work that wasn't mine, blamed for errors I never made. All I ever asked for was one chance to prove myself, and today I've done exactly that. There is no more room for lies." The room hung in silence for one long, heavy beat. Then the chairman slammed his pen on the table. His voice cut through the air. "Travis Cole, you are suspended immediately pending investigation. Until this is resolved, you no longer have authority over this project. From this moment, Emily Parker will lead in your place." Travis's mouth fell open, his voice cracking. "You can't do this to me. I've dedicated." HR cut him off coldly. "The evidence doesn't lie, Travis. Your actions are a serious violation of company policy. The suspension is effective immediately." The clients rose, shook my hand, and said in front of everyone, "We trust Emily. Her vision is exactly what we've been looking for." My coworkers whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with shock and respect. A few bowed their heads, ashamed they had once mocked me. Jenna smiled, pride shining in her eyes. As for Travis, he stood frozen, his face pale, his lips trembling. I saw the collapse in his eyes. No excuses left, no smug smiles, nothing but defeat. Security escorted him gently out of the room, under the scornful, rejecting stares of everyone present. In that moment, my chest swelled with a satisfaction I had never known. Every humiliation, every tear, every sleepless night of torment, all of it had finally been repaid with truth exposed. Justice served. But I knew this was only the immediate consequence. Travis's story wasn't over, and the long-term fallout would be far harsher. I closed my green notebook softly and whispered, "This is only the beginning." After that meeting, Travis vanished from the office as if he had never existed. But I knew what awaited him outside was the real punishment. News spread quickly. In this industry, nothing destroys a career faster than the reputation of stealing credit. Just a few weeks later, I heard his file had leaked. Internal policy violations, manipulation of subordinates, deliberate log tampering. No company would touch someone with a record like that. From an ambitious manager, Travis became a name erased from conversations, a shadow on every blacklist. I no longer saw his smug grin, no longer heard his mocking voice echo every time I entered a room. The image of him being escorted out of that meeting still burned in my memory, but it no longer filled me with anger. It felt like the necessary closure. As for me, my life turned to a new page. The executives assigned me as the lead strategist for major clients. No longer was I shoved into trivial tasks, no longer forced to prove myself by cleaning up someone else's mess. My colleagues now looked at me differently, with respect and even a hint of caution. I still carried my lunchbox, still sat in my usual corner, but no one laughed anymore. Jenna was promoted to team lead, and for the first time, I truly felt like I had a team standing behind me. What surprised me most was Liam. One afternoon, he approached my desk, his face uneasy. "Emily, I want to apologize. I was wrong to side with Travis. I was scared of being shut out, so I stayed silent. But that day, when you stood up, I realized you were braver than all of us." I studied him for a moment, then nodded gently. "What matters is that you understand now. Work with your own ability. Don't repeat that mistake." Liam lowered his head, and I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. I understood then that not everyone is rotten to the core. Some only need one chance to redeem themselves, to find their way back. And sometimes forgiveness, given with boundaries, is also a way to heal wounds. That night, I opened my green notebook and wrote, "Travis has paid the price. I have my new position. And even those who once turned their backs now know regret. This is not just my victory, it is the victory of fairness." A new chapter had begun, and I was ready to step into it with the belief that I had weathered the worst of the storm. Those who look down on others because of their background will ultimately destroy their own careers. Respect must come from fairness and ability, not prejudice. That was my story, a journey filled with tears, humiliation, and finally, justice being served. But what about you? Have you ever been underestimated just because of where you came from? Or judged unfairly for a small detail in your life? If so, what did you do to prove your true worth? I want to hear your story, because each of us carries a revenge story worth telling. Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might just be the motivation someone else needs to keep going. If this story resonated with you, hit like, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to True Revenge Stories so you won't miss any powerful new revenge stories we bring every day. You can also check out our playlist for the latest episodes. Stories where justice is served, where those who were trampled on stood back up, stronger than ever. So are you ready for the next story?